Bertalic, I'll be chairing the meeting, and if we could all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Also, if I may, regarding the roll call, present is Councilman Ken Demers, myself, Robert DeCina, Councilman Gary Lafferty, and Councilman Karina Noyd, sitting in for Councilman Rachel Ryan. Representing from Public Works is Mr. Lukowski, Paul Bukovich, Bobby Grandpre, and Joe Millette. And the secretary? Carissa. Thank you. All right. Public participation. Anybody coming in? No? Okay. Minutes. I'm looking for an approval of the February 12th meeting minutes.
All right. I'll make a motion to approve the February 12th, 2024 meeting minutes.
Second.
So approved.
No discussion,
No discussion?
changes,
No changes? Thank you.
Everybody in favor?
Everybody in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you. Any correspondence to,
We have no correspondence.
thank you, sir. And we'll continue then. We're going to go to old business.
Okay, Jerry Lukowski, Director of Public Works.
Yes, sir.
I plan to go through the old and new business. The first one is for the pavement management program for the summer of '24. I handed out the list at the last meeting, and it's the last page on your handout. I know you're going to take a look at it, and we're going to vote on it tonight. There's only one addition, and that is Wilson Drive. And it's a priority because Eversource Natural Gas is geared up to give us a check for $20,000. So we could team it up with town funding and pave that road. They did put a gas main in there last year. It's basically failing and falling apart. So it was good for them not to repatch the road, for us to go through and mill and pave the road and have a road that meets our standards. So that's the only addition that we have to this. So if we could get a vote for the town roads that are going to be paved or chip sealed this coming year from the Public Works Subcommittee.
Thank you, sir. Any motion
I
to
just,
accept the
I was
recommendation?
just taking a quick look at it.
Yes, sir.
It's basically what we called out last year and what we have ready for this year.
Okay.
We are going to look at totally new roads for the upcoming 25 and 26 season for that, using the beta road study as our guidance for that. And we don't fix, it's all part of the strategy is not to fix worst first. We have to fix at multiple levels of the deterioration curve, because we don't want to have roads keep on failing and us spending 10 to 20 times the amount of money to do full depth reconstruction.
Sounds good, Chair. I'll make the motion to approve the pavement management program for summer '24 pavement list that you have attached. And it is dated that it was updated on Thursday, April 4th, 2024.
Second.
Any comments or discussion?
Looks good.
Well, the only thing, Jerry, you said the $20,000 is from Eversource?
Correct.
That's going to cover,
So basically, they're just paying their portion of the road that's failed. From the beta study, it was about $35,000 to $40,000
okay.
just for the mill and pave. But there's a lot of catch basin work and corrugated metal pipe that's failed, so it's actually going to be about an $80,000 to $90,000 project. But we can't hit up Eversource on the corrugated metal pipe or the catch basins. So, and it's something where I don't want to take their money and then not do anything with it that was designated for that road. And that's why I kind of made it a priority, because I don't want to forget about it as a road. There's about a dozen catch basins and a couple hundred linear feet of pipe that has to be replaced. So they're paying half of the mill and pave, but it's really only a quarter, because the other half is all the drainage work that we have to do on the road.
Okay.
If we could have a vote regarding the motion made by Mr. Demers and seconded by Mr. Lafferty?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. And if I may add to this, I myself was up there several times last year while Eversource was doing the work, and a lot of work was done by them, and if they're going to pay for what they did, and a lot was done in addition to what they were doing running the gas main through, it's well recommended by Mr. Lukowski.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item C. The
Okay,
Guernsey
just,
Town project update.
I don't think we need any more votes tonight. They're mainly just updates. So Wilson Street Bridge is going to start back up in the month of May,
I'm sorry.
which is basically to finish the sidewalk and to finish the final coat of pavement on the road. And also there's some driveways that we have to work. That was part of the agreement for the easements that we acquired for the Wilson Street Bridge. The one long tent pole in the tent is Altice. They're a cable company. The other cable companies and Eversource do a decent job at relocating the poles, but Altice takes very long time for that. We've reached out to them from the contractor, Dayton, from the engineer, SLR, and from myself to get on it. They're the last cables that are on the old poles that have to be relocated for the project. So we recently reached out to them at the end of last week for like the third or fourth time. It's basically, once they get moved, it's sidewalk and pavement, and then we'll be done with the project. The past couple of storms have passed quite well underneath the bridge, because there's not a center column or center pier that's underneath the bridge like the old bridge. So each of the pretty decent storms we've had, they just pass right through. I know Bob and myself and the engineers go up there during these storms to take a look at it, and everything's running well with the project. If I could move on to Guernsey Town. We didn't necessarily have a winter shutdown because the winter wasn't that heavy. So the contractor is ahead of schedule for that, other than the amount of rain. The only times they shut down is during the heavy rain periods. But we do have to shut the road down this coming Monday. I'll be putting out a press release this coming tomorrow or Wednesday. There'll be local access only by the residents because we have to put in a very large head wall. And then once it's shut down, we're going to also, it's right after that, we're going to start doing the full depth pavement, more on the southerly portion near the golf course. So we weren't anticipating being here this early, but without the shutdown, we're ahead of schedule. Altice is the long tent pole in the tent, but it looks like Eversource offered to move the wires for Altice because they're slack in the cable, so they don't have to do any splicing or any additional cutting. We hope that Altice gives them the thumbs up and then we could get the utilities under control, and then it's back to Guerrera for working the project. I don't have I'll be guessing on a percent, but we're probably more than 50% complete with the job. It's a $4.4 million, 100% state funded. We are working some additional drainage concerns that we had because we didn't want to necessarily bring the drainage down West Street because it was already failing and would have to replace about 700 linear feet of pipe down West Street that wasn't part of the project. So we're just working it in a little bit different direction. For Main Street, Ty and Bond, we do have their initial scope of work. It came in last week. I do have to share it with the team, because I know Joe sat with us on the selection for that, and how they broke up the planning and design for Watertown, and more of an advanced study for Oakville, for the ARPA funds, and the Johanna Hayes funds that we have for Main Street. I also listed 686 Main Street, Mr. Greenberg's building. It's currently out to bid. He's bidding it, not the town. And there's been a few contractors that's been working with us for knocking the building down, for doing the site work, and doing the paving of the parking lot. So we made some pretty great steps along the way. I'd like to thank Paul and Joe for getting us to this point to help with the safety and get some off-street parking right on Main Street, but off of Main Street for that. The Steelbrook Greenway, it's under design. The goal is to get it fully completed and out to bid at the end of this winter. Believe it or not, we think that far out in advance, so we could do construction in the spring of next year. We do have our monthly meeting tomorrow with Weston and Sampson, who's the designer of record. And we're also going after, we understand, a small grant from the state for $250,000 to fill in the gap between the Unico Bridge and the pedestrian bridge. So we're working with the town manager with the help of my staff to get the price and also the actual sketch that could go into that grant application. So we could have something from the pedestrian bridge all the way to French Street and beyond for that. Thank you. We're kind of used to working with each other now and getting stuff done. So that's pretty neat to see. The Beta sidewalk study, it was given to the subcommittee about 3 to 4 months ago. It basically validated we have 37 miles of sidewalk, and it's a $6.5 million price tag to repair the sidewalks. We did do the shaving of the sidewalks at a couple hundred locations across the town. And what I would like to gear up is for the November election is a $500,000 or $1 million bond to start a program to start repairing our sidewalks by contractors, but also by highways that we team up to get through the amount of work that we have. One individual that calls me yearly now that I've been here the second year, is from the pin shop, and when are we going to fix their sidewalks? So it's not an easy task. I could put highways down there the whole summer and we might get it done and not do anything else. But it's also, we also don't want to do too much work because of Main Street if we're going to do additional design. But it's more of, I have to meet with the owner. I do owe him a visit to see which areas we could do some repairs, but not necessarily fully replace the sidewalks on both sides of the pin shop. Bunker Hill, it was an update. I did talk briefly about it last meeting. We had 3 water main breaks in one night, and what we found out is there's contamination from the gas station at the bottom of the hill from Bunker Hill. The DEP hired a contractor and did some wells to test, and it did come up with heavy concentrations of gasoline that's under the road, but also with a couple of the adjacent neighbors to the north of Bunker Hill, next to Apr08. Getting great help from the fire marshal, who's the point of contact with the DEP. And also the DEP is going to be working with the gas station for a plan to remediate what we have underneath the road and also those property owners. I just wanted to make sure that the Public Works Subcommittee knew about it, and also the town council for what we're facing there. I guess the spill happened a few decades ago, and they have documentation from the DEP talking with the gas station owner back in a decade or two ago for that.
Interesting. Very familiar.
That's it for old business, and you want me to run right into new business unless you have any questions?
I got a couple of questions.
Me too. Go ahead.
Where was it? Oh, as far as Altice, they're moving the utility poles and that.
Yep.
Are you, I'm on the cable board in town here, so I know one of the executives that if he had to have anything, you know, pushed ahead, or, you know, she goes to the board, the New York office, I guess, and can expedite.
That would be great, so.
I'm not sure if you're, I mean, the lady's name is Esme Lombardi, so I don't know who your contact is.
Okay.
I got her information if you need it.
And she's from Altice itself?
Yeah, because when we meet 3 or 4 times a year, she's the representative from the cable company.
Yeah, we definitely might need your help.
Yeah,
The poles are on Eversource to move,
yeah,
so they put the new poles in, then Eversource moves over their cables, and then the 3 or 4 other cable companies move them over, Comcast, Frontier.
yeah,
And it's usually Altice is the hardest one to work with.
yeah.
Someone from Altice called today
Okay,
to get mapping, but it was for the gas station.
okay. Bunker Hill?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, and the last thing is that on the Wilson Street Bridge part, people are asking me, are those stop signs going to be permanent, or are they just there while construction's going on?
From talking with the police chief, we would like to keep them permanent on the site.
Okay, because they're complaining about had to stop and, you know, they're using the excuse, oh, they caught, you know, wasted gas is stopping and going or whatever, but I don't know, I just figured, because like, even though like on Sylvan Lake Road and Falls Avenue, they eliminated those stop signs over there. And then, you know, now they're gonna keep, I think it's good to have them there myself.
I don't think it's really a concern for, you know, I think it's the safety outweighs if we're wasting a little bit of gas to stop. I know all the local residents requested them to come in.
Oh, okay.
We put them there for the temporary portion because the project's not fully complete. And I did work with, I know Bob and I worked with the police chief, and the recommendation was to keep them in place.
All right, I'll just pass it on to
Because it's also, it's where it's hard to imagine, but it's where the Steelbrook Greenway eventually is gonna go, and that's the crossing point to get across the bridge. You know, we're putting a walkway in there at that location. We probably won't see it for many years to get to that. We have to get this part done down here first before we start doing the design work further up the Steelbrook. So it ties in with the stop signs, the crosswalk, and I know Bob and I are on the roads. Bob's on the road every day. I'm on the road every other day. It's very, when you're standing there on the road, and before the stop signs, they were moving at a pretty fast pace. And we took out most of the curve, but there's still a slight curve that's in that road section.
If I may, sir, we're going to back up to the Beta sidewalk study.
Yes.
We're talking about Route 73, Main Street in Oakville.
Yes.
And the area between Buckingham Street south to the Waterbury line, which would be Falls Avenue. I've noticed, being a frequent flyer there daily, that the state has been doing much work on the sidewalks along the northbound lane and the retaining wall
Yes.
by St. Mary Magdalene Church.
Mhm.
Now, if we got involved in doing the sidewalks, would that be along the southbound lane where the pin shop is? Or would it be a continuation of where the state would stop doing their work, and they're doing the work all the way on the sidewalks, it appears, down to Falls Avenue?
They're only repairing the wall. They're not doing any work on that sidewalk.
Thank you. Not at all.
Not at all.
Thank you.
Just the wall.
So we would be acquiring, doing the sidewalk work if we were able to get this beta funding.
Correct, and it would be something that I meet with the owner to, where's, basically the question, where's most of your pedestrian traffic? That's where I'd want to at least do the repairs, other than repairing all $6.5 million at once. And I did actually see Beta today at the American Public Works Association, and we said, what could be, we know everything's a priority, but he said the priority should start with all 5 schools. So we have the sidewalks that lead into the schools as a priority for, to removing any hazards that we have.
Thank you very much. Thank you. New business.
Okay, new business. We have 2 bids that are out. One's going to open Tuesday, one's going to open Thursday of next week. So we do have a chipstone bid. We took it under recommendation and advisement to put out the bid. We're not going to use, our plan is not to use, you gave me approval last year to use a Fairfield bid, but this time we're going to have our own town bid for chipstone for that. And the second bid is for detention basins. We have approximately 10 locations for that. The focus this year is going to be on the Turkey Brook to remove all the woody debris, the trees, help build some limited access roads to that. And then on the highway side, we're going to rent the 60-foot stick like we did last year and clean out the sediment load that we have in those detention basins. The one concern I have, it's probably going to come in at a hefty price tag by a contractor. So we might have to value down, instead of doing 10 basins, maybe 4 or 5 or 6 for this coming year. But it also means that if, I give it to highways, we'll lose them for a month or 2 or 3 months just clearing out the detention basins. That's why the price tag came in so high on the basins. But it's kind of a hard thing to estimate because it's the first time we're putting something out to bid like this. And if we're successful with a decent price, next year we want to then focus on the Steel Brook detention basins that lead into the Steel Brook. One of the classes I took today is Stratford did a drainage study. I'm going to try to find out what they paid for it. I know it was definitely 6 figures, a couple $100,000. But some of the takeaways is if you have the study, then you could chase the federal and state grants. But also they're saying that the 25-year storm is really coming every 10 years, especially now from what they used to do their calculations from the 1960s from the USGS and NOAA. And what they're looking at 30 years from now is just and we could see it the past 15 years or probably 15 months were over 8 feet of rain. Is that the storms are coming more frequently and there's additional volume and intensity of the storms. So what was designed and built in the 60s, 70s, and 80s is not able to stand up to what's now and really what's going to come on in the future. They were talking out to 2050. So it's just not us. It's a New England thing with the storms that are coming for the amount of rain for that. But And that's where I want to start with detention basins, to hold the water in place, to clean it up a little bit, but also hold the volume of water. And I'll get it wrong, but we have, I think, 49 or 50 detention basins that are town-owned in the town. And it's a multi-year program, at least 5 years or more to get through all of them. It's probably closer to 10 years to get there. But that's why I focus on Turkey Brook this year, Steel Brook the following year. If I can move on to town bonding, unless you have any questions on the two bids that we have.
Go right ahead.
So paving, we're looking at acquiring the other $2.5 million that we have in approved bonding this July 1st. But we're also looking at going at least $5 million in November election for town bonding, if not more, because we won't have any funding for 2025 to do any additional roads for the paving. Our current backlog is $41 million from the beta study. And it was $45 million, and we put $4 million into it, $2.5 million in town bonding, and $1.5 million in ARPA funding for that. So what you approved is basically the other $2.5 million. And then we are going to develop a list, a $2.5 million list, a $5 million, and $2.5 million increments to see what we want to do next at the next time we have to go for town bonding. Sidewalks, I kind of already talked about it already, was focusing on schools and working outwards from those schools to make sure those sidewalks are safe. And then other areas that we have in town. And then drainage, and to me, the focus, I know there's a page in the book that I had for drainage, and I listed like 10 to 15 items. It's really all about the detention basins. If it's operating funds or if it's capital funds to clean out the 49 to 50 detention basins that we have in the town for that. Any questions on that?
Yeah, I do. On the detention basins, did they figure out how many are like privately owned?
Yes, I do have a list. I could follow back up to the subcommittee. We keep a spreadsheet with colors. I want to say it's around 30 to 35 privately owned basins. So I have a list of town-owned basins and privately owned basins. We met with the Inland Wetlands Commissioner last week, Paul and I did, and also the Inland Wetlands Enforcement Officer. And we went through the list and saying, you got to write letters and follow up with the private-owned basins. They have to take care of them. And the engineering department and highways and myself will take care of the town-owned basins. Big example of the basins are up around UPS. There's probably within a half-mile radius of our commercial area, there's probably a half dozen to a dozen to 10. You can't tell where they're at, they're totally grown in. So when they were put in there during the 80s and 90s, you could probably see them, but not now. So we have no idea the inlet structures, the outlet structures, and the amount of, so to give an example, Pearl Harbor Bridge, we took out 125 to 150 truckloads of sediment, and it's kind of the same thing for each basin. We're taking out 10 to 20 truckloads of sediment. That gives you 10 to 20 truckloads of water storage in that basin, then to gradually release it after the storm. So not only the release, but Paul will also tell me and whisper to me, it's also to clean up the water. So we take all the sediments out of it. And we are reviewing any future development in the town to making sure that we have an access road to get to it.
Absolutely.
And we also, the new designs, you have a forebay. It's just where all the sediment goes in the forebay and not in the rest of the basin. And usually you might even have another bay before you discharge it into the water course. Because the older designs, it was basically one open bay and the sediment spread out over the entire area for that. So every truckload of sediment that we could take out is another truckload of water that we could store during that storm event. So.
Thank you.
I have a question through the chair. Chair, when a developer develops a project, there's a thing called a developer's agreement.
Yep.
Does that address this issue so that it doesn't keep happening?
And that's what is in the agreements between planning and zoning and inland and wetlands. And we would just want them to enforce those agreements that are in place.
Right.
And not come back to the engineering team for us to follow up with them. I gave them examples from Southbury, and you write them a letter, and guess what? Half of them will do it, and the other half you have to chase. But at least half of them are doing it. And then you got a smaller group of folks to chase for those private developments to clean out their basins.
Right, and this access road that Paul mentioned, these are like a gravel type of road that,
Basic roads that our equipment could drive on.
Right.
Because a lot of not a lot, but there's some of them that have no access roads. They're down steep embankments, and we can't get to them
right,
without really tearing up somebody's yard. But it's our right-of-way, there's usually a right-of-way, but there's no road that's located to get to them.
thank you.
On new business, item C, the Northfield 48
Yeah, so,
pipe road collapse.
We had a corrugated metal pipe that failed on us. We did do a repair a few years ago, and it failed again on us. So we have to replace, Bob, help me out, approximately 50 linear feet of pipe.
It's about 55 feet, including the flare heads. We're replacing a 52 by 40 inch, what we call swash pipe. It's wider than it is tall. So it's corrugated metal, the bottom is rotted out. There's no bottom of the pipe, that's why the road is failing. And so we're replacing the corrugated metal pipe with a 48 inch round ADS plastic pipe. It should, hydraulically, it should be the same, it'll flow the same, but it should be like that. But they just didn't have the technology back in the 50s when this pipe was put in place. They got a good life out of it. So right now it's down to one lane because the outlet side is the worst. You repaired a temporary repair on the inlet side a few years back. Now the outlet side is failed, so the whole pipe needs to be replaced. We ordered the pipe, it should be in 2 to 3 weeks. I'm trying to contact the property owner right now that owns the corner where the inlet pipe is, because we need to dam up the water that's coming down the brook and rent a water pump to move the water around the work area while we replace the pipe. Get prices on renting the water pump, which is a pretty large diesel powered water pump that's going to run 24 hours a day through the duration of the project. We work the water around the work area, and when the pipe comes in, I should have everything else lined up, because we're going to have to shut the road down for at least, we're thinking 24 hours to get us back to gravel, and then probably another 8-hour day to repave.
The intricate part of the job is, this is also where the 36-inch main that feeds us our domestic water is underneath it. We did talk to Waterbury, it's about 8.5 feet below. So we're only gonna have a foot or two on top of it once we dig it out to put the 4-foot pipe and give us a foot or two on top of our stormwater drainage pipe. So that's one of the slow parts. We have to take it easy to make sure we don't impact that pipe. In the other part, it could be not necessarily the perfect timing, because we're gonna have to shut down the Wilson Street Bridge for a few weeks in order to do the final pavement and the sidewalk work. And this is a half-mile, quarter-mile to the north of it. So about a quarter-mile to the north is the 48-inch Northfield pipe. So I'll be working with Bob and Dayton to making sure that we don't isolate L and K and the subdivisions that are in there with Wilson Street closed down and Northfield above it closed down. So we just have to schedule between the contractor and us who goes first. And it depends when our material comes in on who's going to go first.
Mr. Lukowski, would this be in the area of Fern Hill Road and Northfield Road?
Negative. It would be just north of the intersection with L&K.
Okay.
So it's Wilson Street Bridge.
Yeah, by Larry Black's driveway.
Just before Larry Black's driveway.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Okay, got it.
So yeah, Wilson Street Bridge, then L and K, and just to the north of that, well before Fern Hill,
Well before Hopkins.
well before Hopkins too. So between Hopkins and L and K.
Where there's a new house being built.
Correct.
Yeah,
Yeah, modern.
yeah. And you guys are doing that job
Yes.
in-house? Yeah. Okay.
Nine, transfers and appropriations.
None.
Thank you.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Recording stopped.
Very good.